Hello friends, welcome to Current Jobs. Today we'll be having a small discussion on Economic Survey. The Economic Survey is one of the most awaited documents on the preparation for economics for UPSC prelims. It gives us various key terms such as twin balance sheet syndrome or crony capitalism, and also gives us various trends in order to solve questions in the prelims. Now, I am Ayush Agarwal. I am economics faculty at Manifest IAS. My email ID is ayush@manifestis.com. Now, one of the things which we are doing from this video is the strategy talk, which is simply what strategies are needed for attempting the questions in the exam and what is the proper way or the wisest way to study for the exam. So, how important is data or facts, or what are the importance of facts, trends, etc. for prelims, especially for economics? This is a very common doubt in economics, and generally people get confused about what data to refer, what to focus upon, and what not to focus upon. So, I'll be answering about this at the end of the video. Now, coming to today's topic, which is economic survey, I divide the economic survey into various themes such as agriculture, sustainable development, rural development, education and skill development, health, exports, because this time the economic survey talks about network products, MSMEs, because MSMEs are the key backbone of India, and the present slowdown is hurting MSMEs such as the liquidity crisis in NBFCs. So we have to specially focus upon the MSMEs. Then national income, because there were some doubts about the actual growth rate of India compared to what was reported by the government. So we have to be, the economic survey makes a clarity upon what are the true estimates of national income in India. Then coming to the next point, which is banking and NBFCs, which have been a key hot topic in the previous year. Then disinvestment, fiscal policy, as we know the fiscal deficit and budget deficit are in news. Then addressing the current economic slowdown. Then most importantly, the economic survey is always based on some themes. For example, this year the themes are invisible hand and hand of trust, pro-business policies of the government, how is entrepreneurship helping grassroots economic development, what is the pros and cons of a big government, etc.
Subscribe now and press the bell icon. Never miss an update.
So coming to the first topic, which is agriculture. Now under agriculture, the first theme is that the economic survey talks about increasing mechanization to improve productivity in agriculture. It says that the agri mechanization in India is only 40% as compared to 75% in Brazil or much higher in other developing countries. Now, agri mechanization will especially help the small and marginal farmers. For example, there is talk about Uberization of tractors in India. So maybe we can develop some apps where a tractor can be hired for 1 hour on a hourly payment basis, a laser leveler, a happy seeder, harvester, etc. So this will go a long way in improving the agriculture productivity. So this has been talked about through development of agri equipment centers or common service centers for farmers, and there is a scheme for encouraging youth or agriculture graduates to set up these centers so that there is more agri mechanization in India. Now coming to the next theme under agriculture, which is highly skewed pattern of credit in northeastern states. Basically this is that agriculture credit is the backbone for agriculture productivity, because without credit a farmer will not be able to get inputs on time. So for this we have to deepen the credit network, the formal network, through banking correspondents or payment banks or simply other cooperative societies in the northeastern region. Now the next theme is livestock, because the goal of the current government is to double farmers' income by 2022. Now for this, and as we know that the monsoon dependence is also very high in India, 60% of the farmers are dependent on monsoon. So even if the crop fails, they can go for fodder crops, and increase in fodder production would indirectly lead to greater livestock productivity. So livestock has become an important pillar not only for doubling farmers' income, but to stabilize the farmers' income in case of droughts, floods, etc. Now coming to the next theme, which is micro irrigation fund. See, as we talked about, that 60% of the farmers are having monsoon dependence, or in other words, we can say more than 60% of the farmers are having water stress conditions, or management of water is a chief concern for farming in India. So therefore, a micro irrigation fund of 5,000 crore has been set up under NABARD, Under this, micro irrigation is simply drip irrigation, sprinkler irrigation, watershed development, etc. So here a subsidy is provided to the farmer in case he goes for drip irrigation or sprinkler irrigation implements. Now the next thing is food processing, because as we know, food processing will reduce waste, increase value addition, promote crop diversification, promote employment, and also enables export earnings. So the last point is also important in view of, because previously what used to happen, we used to live in a shortage economy. That is the era from 60s to 90s, where we were dependent on food imports, or we were dependent on fulfilling the demand. But now the problem is there is surplus of food production. You might have heard about people dumping potatoes outside the chief minister's house. So basically, it is more about management of food. So if we have proper food processing to reduce waste, increase value addition, promote employment, and this will enable greater export earnings for us, and also safeguard the market for farmers, or what we call terms of trade of farming will be protected. Now coming to the next theme, which is better prices for farmers. So that is what we say, less volatility of farmers or more stability for farmers is required. So for this, we need to develop better marketing channels, have proper storage facilities, as we discussed in the budget about Dhanya Lakshmi, where SHGs would be encouraged to put up storage facilities in the taluk level or the block level. And we need to implement effectively our minimum support price system through ENAM or Gramin agriculture markets, etc. Now coming to the next theme, which is what does the economic service suggest about agriculture? So it talks about trade and fiscal policy instruments. As we talked about, trade is basically we need to encourage farming exports to manage the food supply in India, to manage surplus and deficits. We should not go for ad hoc trade policy. And also fiscal policy, where the government should not intervene from time to time and let the market function. For example, we'll discuss in the later slides about the Essential Commodities Act. When it talks about minimum export prices, that we should be very liberal about minimum export prices, and we should let it trade freely, and that will build up more investment, more storage, more attractiveness towards investment in agriculture in India. So we need to completely do away with export restrictions, and also have some safeguards about stock limits, because it talks about the stock limits in case, instead of encouraging more investment, it discourages them, because you're not allowed to stock beyond a particular limit. So why will one corporate or one foreign investor invest in storage in India? And not, also the economic survey makes a claim that the stock limits have further made the prices volatile instead of controlling them. Now coming to the next theme, which is sustainability of food security. So it talks about how to address the ever increasing food subsidy bill, and it also talks about rationalization of rates of rice, wheat, and other crops, and also the coverage under NFSA, such as we have previous reports such as Shantakumar committee, so which talks about that we should reduce the coverage from 67% to 40%. So similarly, the economic survey gives suggestions for revising rates under PDS, and also to how to expand more coverage under National Food Security Act, such as including of pulses, etc. When it talks about procurement of food grains, so procurement, it talks about a price stabilization fund to safeguard the income of farmers, so that there is no distressed sale, and MSP, as we discussed, proper implementation of MSP. Now coming to the next theme, overall theme, which is sustainable development. Under sustainable development, the first issue which economic survey talks about is solar risk mitigation initiative. Now this will function as an incubator, where ideas, see, incubator is basically where startups come up with ideas and they're handheld in promotion of some technologies, such as this is under International Solar Alliance, where India will set up a solar risk mitigation initiative, so that startups are encouraged to venture into renewable energy. Now coming to the next point, accelerator by developing tools to aggregate demand for 1000 megawatt solar and 2.7 lakh solar water pumps. So basically, this is to encourage disaggregated processors or disaggregated investors to pool their assets and contribute towards the larger goal of 1000 megawatts of solar and 2.7 lakh solar water pumps, by developing some mechanism to aggregate their output and to aggregate their inputs. Now coming to sustainable development goals, which is very important for the exam. So Niti Aayog is responsible for SDGs in India. So under SDGs, India is required to submit a nationally determined contributions under Paris Agreement. For example, it talks about carbon intensity or what are we going to do in the next 5 years, etc. So principles of equity and common but differentiated responsibilities. See, CBDR, as we discussed, is between what should a developed country do and what should a developing country do. What does India stands? So all these are made clear under our nationally determined contributions. And also, the Niti Aayog is in the process of revising National Action Plan on Climate Change. I repeat, National Action Plan on Climate Change, which has 8 missions, such as Mission for Himalayan Ecosystems, Mission for Green India, Solar Mission, etc. So this is also being revised in line with our Paris commitments. Now coming to the next, what are we doing under those revision of NAPCC? It is basically first, clean and efficient energy system. For example, Bureau of Energy Efficiency, if we have seen, so enhance energy efficiency through better ratings, better labeling standards, better output from our power plants, etc. For example, shutting down the old power plants which are above the emission norms. Enhance energy efficiency talks about your fridge, TV, AC, which are revising your labeling standards. Resilient urban infrastructure, safe, smart, and sustainable green transportation network. See, by boosting your electric buses, FAME scheme, etc. Planned afforestation, especially under RED plus, REDD plus, where India has made a commitment for plus, which is talking about afforestation instead of just preventing deforestation. And lastly, holistic participation across all sectors. Holistic participation across all sectors. So under NAPCC, the goal 8 under or mission 8 was boosting partnership and knowledge networks. So this is also about holistic participation. Now coming to the next theme, which is CDRI, Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. So this is the second major initiative after International Solar Alliance by India. So this is basically that in case of drought, flood, or any other natural disaster, India should have infrastructure which is sustainable, which is resilient, which is able to support even in tough times. So that is what is about Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. The next theme is in UNCCD, which is United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. So this conference was held in New Delhi, and under that New Delhi Declaration was signed, under which it was decided to invest more in land and unlocking in opportunities in land development. Enhance South-South cooperation, where North is the developed country, South is developing country. So South-South is more cooperation between India and other developing countries or developing and developing countries. And lastly, the new agenda, which is Global Action Agenda for Land Water Management, was also discussed under the conference. Lastly, India joined in 2019 International Platform for Sustainable Finance, which enables listing of green bonds. Green bonds are nothing but money raised for financing carbon neutral initiatives or money raised for financing green infrastructure. So therefore, India joined it in 2019. So it will enable more climate finance or green finance towards India. Lastly, the next issue is SDG index. As we discussed, SDGs are responsible. The organization is Niti Aayog. So under that, Niti Aayog comes up with the SDG index for all the states. So which state is performing well, which state is lagging behind. So it has divided various states into 5 parts. First category is aspirant, then performer, front runner, and achiever. And similarly, every year the Niti Aayog will give us ranking for states. For example, Kerala was first, Himachal was second, etc. based on these parameters. And it will classify the states as per aspirant, performer, front runner, and achiever. So lastly, the economic survey talks about well-designed initiatives for inclusive development. So first, under which electrification of all households under Saubhagya scheme, augmenting usage of renewable energy, eliminating malnutrition, as we have known Poshan Abhiyan to eliminate malnutrition, eradicating poverty, increasing access to primary education to all girls, providing sanitation. So for this, we have made good strides under Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, housing for all, like Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, skill development, enabling access to finance and financial services. Now coming to the next pillar, which is rural development. So under rural development, the first thing which we talk about is a 10-year rural sanitation strategy, which was tabled in the parliament, which is from the year 2019 to 29. So it will talk about, it discusses that how to sustain the change behavior under ODF, ODF plus and ODF plus plus, and also to increase access to solid and liquid waste management in India. Then the next pillar is Jal Shakti Abhiyan, to conserve water. So water conservation activities in most stressed blocks and districts is carried out under Jal Shakti Abhiyan. So we have also a mission that every household should get tap water by 2024. So this is also in line with that argument. And Jal Shakti Abhiyan especially talks about conservation of water in agriculture. So 80% of water can be recycled in agriculture in most stressed blocks and districts according to Jal Shakti Abhiyan. Now coming to education, under education, the economic survey has suggested many schemes which are going on in India, such as the first is Samagra Shiksha, where we take a holistic view of education in India. Samagra Shiksha is a holistic view where the age group 3 to 18 is considered. Basically, Samagra Shiksha is a combination of your right to education, Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan, etc. Then it talks about Navodaya Vidyalaya scheme, talks about Dhruv, which is PM Innovative Learning Program, Diksha, which is for enhancing digital knowledge and digital infrastructure in India, HEFA Higher Education Financing Agency, where the higher education institutes, especially Institute of Eminence, will get support from higher funding to finance the infrastructure finance. Then the next is NEET, which is National Education Alliance for Technology, basically having a greater partnership in various technical institutes. Then it talks about Equip. This is very important because now we have enrollment, but we need to focus more about quality. So education quality upgradation and inclusion program under Equip. Then next is Paramarsh scheme. Then Swayam 2.0, which is a self-learning program. Then E-Pathshala, about making resources available online. And UDICE, which is Unified District Information System for Education, to give us a track that what are the math skills, what are the English skills, what is the performance of schools at the grassroots level, etc. Then the next pillar is skill development, where in skill development they talk about Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, that talks about short-term training. It talks about recognition of prior learning and also apprenticeship scheme, where even in the budget we had said that there is a proposal to allow 1 lakh engineering graduates to get internships in municipal corporations. So it talks about apprenticeship scheme and attachment of apprenticeship programs in various degree colleges. Then further under education, we discuss about national education policy. So national education policy, which is last reviewed was in 1986. So we are coming up with a new education policy with a focus on quality education, innovation and research. So this is still in a draft phase, although it tries to upgrade India's standard in terms of innovation research and also quality education. And so what are the concerns under new education policy? First is the higher dropout rates and second is affordability. So high fees is also a problem. Then coming to health, under health, first is that the economic survey talks about how have the mission mode initiatives helped India and what can be done to enhance the effectiveness of these programs. The first is Eat Right, Eat Safe, where FSSAI comes up with various standards about what is safe food. Especially we have heard about LDL and HDL and about oils and quality of oil in India. Second is about Fit India movement, then Anemia Mukt Bharat, Poshan Abhiyan, and lastly Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. And also economic survey talks about the effectiveness of banning e-cigarettes in India. Then further under health, it talks about how to reduce the out-of-pocket health expenditure. So one of the main concerns about healthcare in India was high out-of-pocket health expenditure. Basically, how much money do you spend and how much money is supported by the government. So in order to reduce the out-of-pocket health expenditure, the government has launched the following initiatives. Free Drug Service Initiative, Free Diagnostic Service Initiative, Pradhan Mantri Bharatiya Jan Aushadhi Yojana. Jan Aushadhi is where generic medicines are available at a very cheap rate. Then Pradhan Mantri National Dialysis Program. So this national dialysis program will be carried out at the district level. Then coming to the next one, which is Ayushman Bharat. This is about 5 lakh rupees insurance covers. Then lastly, Health and Wellness Center for Preventive Healthcare. So Ayushman Bharat will take care of your in-hospital admission and health and wellness centers are for primary healthcare and community healthcare, or what we say preventive and social medicine. Now coming to the next pillar, which is exports, the economic survey puts up a case comparing India's export performance and China's export performance, and it talks about that China deliberately specialized in large scale labor intensive activities, so that's why it was able to industrialize much faster and also with a care to provide so many jobs to its people. And it talks about how was China able to do it using network products. Now network products is not just IT products. Network products are anything which is having a transform boundary. Basically MNCs or multinational corporations have a supply chain. So those supply chains can be multinational or it can be multi-market. It is just they're assembled in China, and slowly what happens when you start assembly, there is some degree of localization which also starts. So it talks about the opportunity of network products manufacturing in India. So India has been so far focusing on traditional labor intensive sectors such as textiles, but now we need to diversify into network products. So that is how we increase the participation in global value chain. So as you said, as we start assembling in India, there might be some opportunities for sourcing from India itself, which we called under phase manufacturing project program also under electronics, for example. Then there exists an untapped potential to emerge as a major hub for final assembly. See, as we know in the recent past, China is facing a problem of Lewis trap. Now here Lewis trap is nothing but aging population, where the working age population is decreasing. So there is less transfer from rural areas of surplus labor to urban areas in China, and that's why wages in China are rising. So there India with a big demographic dividend holds a untapped potential to emerge as a major hub for final assembly of these network products. Now what are these network products and what is the opportunity? So creating jobs and growth by specializing in network products. Export of network products will add $248 billion for making India 5 trillion economy by 2025. And lastly, it can create 4 crore well-paid jobs by 2025. And also it can increase export market share by 3.5% by 2025. So what we need to do is we have to integrate Assemble in India for the World into Make in India campaign. So Economic Survey makes a suggestion of changing Make in India to incorporate Assemble in India as well. Now coming to the export market. So in exports, the Economic Survey talks about an anomaly where it is much easier to import things rather than exporting things. So we have to correct that. So first of all, it talks about direct port delivery scheme for imports, which has worked very well compared to direct port entry scheme for exports. So we need to streamline direct port entry scheme to make it much more easier to export as well. It talks about starting e-Sanchit scheme, which is for documentation. Turant scheme is quoting as example, which is a role model for next gen software for Indian customs to get fast track clearances. And also it talks about what are the potential imports and exports from India. So India's top 5 imports: crude petroleum, gold, petroleum products, coal, coke and briquettes. And exports: petroleum products, precious stones, drugs, gold, iron and steel. We have to launch various schemes so that all these things work out in India's favor, especially the inverted duty structure. And also from this slide, one can make a note of who is the largest trading partner, what is China's position as trade in India, because these are also potential questions in prelims. For example, US is the largest trading partner, as you can see from this slide, and China is the second largest. And in Middle East, UAE is more than Saudi Arabia. Now, about trading across borders, it talks about increasing digitization to make it much more easier to import and export. It talks about integrating multiple agencies on a common platform, and also to remove procedural inefficiencies or promote efficiency across the whole value chain. And as we discussed in the budget, there is also talk about national logistics policy for this. Then coming to the IT and business process management service. So it talks about in the IT sector, Startup India needs to be given a big push. And it also talks about national software product policy. And lastly, it talks about what have been the benefits of removal of angel tax. So this has really boosted investment in India after we removed or we get clarity about what is angel tax. So angel tax was nothing but a tax on investors who invested in the early bird startup or in the idea of the startup. So we need to streamline this so that there is more venture capital investment in India and more attractiveness towards startup India as such. Now coming to MSMEs, which is also a very important pillar of the Indian economy. MSMEs roughly contribute 45% of total employment, exports, etc. to the broader Indian economy. So, and after demonetization and GST, MSMEs have been facing tough times. So therefore, we need a lot of push towards safeguarding the interest of MSMEs. So what are the things which the economic survey mentions? The first is PSB loans in 59 minutes. Basically, this is a portal developed by the government, which is www.psbloansin59minutes.com. Basically, under this, an individual or a business can apply for a loan. For businesses, whether it is GST registered or unregistered, we can go for loans up to 5 crore. That too, they have to just upload all the relevant documents and they'll get a yes or no within 1 hour. So that's why PSB loans in 59 minutes. So this is to ease credit flow to MSMEs and also to individuals. Coming to second, interest subvention scheme 2% for all GST registered MSMEs. That whosoever MSME is GST registered, if they get a loan of, say the loan interest rate is 8%, so 2% will be paid by government, so the effective interest rate paid by them is 6%. Or in other words, interest subsidy intervention or subvention is 2% for MSMEs. Then all companies with turnover above 500 crore to be on trade receivables electronic discounting system or TREDS. Basically, TREDS will solve the problem of working capital for MSMEs because TREDS is nothing but a platform for bill discounting, as we discussed in money market. In money market, there is bills of exchange. So TREDS just makes it electronic and much faster to discount your bills and therefore ease working capital requirement for MSMEs through easier credit. Then public sector will be mandatory to source 25% from MSMEs with a sub limit of 3% for women entrepreneurs to boost participation of women MSMEs. Then all PSUs to use government e-marketplace to purchase their things, and as we know, GM portal is having a lot of enrollment from MSMEs. Then 20 technology centers and 100 extension centers. So basically these help in common tools for MSMEs such as mini tool room to develop their prototypes, to develop their packing technologies, etc. 70% cost towards pharma cluster common infrastructure to be given by government. So basically common infrastructure will mean truck parking, your common effluent plants, etc. to minimize the cost for setting up start of operations for MSMEs. Returns under 8 labor laws and 10 regulations to be filed yearly by MSMEs to make it easier for them to comply with various statutes under law. And lastly, random inspection scheme, which is for labor, will be completely computerized and all reports of labor inspection will be uploaded on the Shram Suvidha portal. Now coming to the controversy regarding national income, because various reports have claimed that India is actually not growing that fast. So economic survey and the team behind the economic survey did a whole study that how relevant are the numbers and how credible are the numbers. So according to the economic survey, the economic survey says that the studies which claim that India is being growing slowly is unsubstantiated by the data available from various sources such as industry, telecom sales, or consumption in India. Secondly, it talks about if we use the same model in other countries, the model does not hold true for 51 other nations as well. And lastly, it talks about that we can also say that the new firms creation or entrepreneurship at the grassroots level has a direct correlation with GDP growth of that district. And this is also correlating with the GDP growth estimated by the official statistics. So basically, new firm creation, growth in district GDP is also aggregating to growth of India. Lastly, Standing Committee on Economic Statistics will give suggestions on improving statistical infrastructure further. As we know, there is a constitution of a National Statistical Commission to suggest greater statistical transparency in this regard. Now coming to banking, which is also very important for prelims. Under banking, the first thing which the economic survey proposes is a fintech hub for PSBs or public sector banking network. So basically this will create a common platform where all public sector banks will share data about their borrowers and will not have problem of KYC or multiple borrowings or cheating or frauds, because as we know there are many frauds which have been reported in the past 2 years. So this will enhance, first of all, loan availability because there will be faster processing by availability of data and prevention of frauds. Secondly, it talks about part ownership by employees through ESOPs or employee stock options. So this will reduce agency problem. Agency problem is basically the employee should feel that they are working for their own or they are working for their own bank. So basically this will encourage them to work harder. This will get a feeling of self ownership. So when there is self ownership, there is higher productivity, higher motivation and higher productivity of employees as well. Then it talks about that Indian banks are very small compared to the peers. For example, if we see the size of our GDP and if we see the number of banks in top 100, India has only three banks or two banks in top 100, although we should have had six by now and probably eight by 2022. So it talks about relatively small size of banks compared to our size of the economy. So it favors larger banks and therefore the government of India has also taken a progressive step in bank mergers. See, lastly from April 1st, we have had 10 banks merging into 4 banks. It also talks about use of big data, machine learning and AI to make better decisions. And lastly, what are the key drivers for growth of banking in India? So first is demography, where we talked about there is increasing share of working age population. Then Jan Dhan Aadhaar Mobile, JAM, and GST, which will cater to more formalization and more digital payments in India. Then it talks about the benefits of public sector bank network, which is curbing double pledging of securities, or the same house cannot be used twice as a collateral for two loans because public sector bank network will be able to build a database of what is the complete information about the borrower. So this will help prevent NPAs, faster loan processing and reduced turnaround time. Then lastly, bilateral netting. So in the budget also we had discussed about bilateral netting, where it will help us clear the balance sheet of the public sector banks, or in other words, help us clear capital for on lending to other sectors. Now coming to NBFCs, it talks about or it suggests to come up with a composite health score for NBFCs in order to avoid ILFS and DHFL type incidents in the future. So it will give an early warning. It talks about potential threshold for permitted funding. So basically potential threshold means risk parameters, and these risk parameters will decide how much funding will ILFS or DHFL get in the future, or so-called NBFCs or housing finance companies might approach in the future. So what is this health score about? It is about asset liquidity management risk, that what are the asset and what is the cash available with the NBFC. What are the interconnected risks, for example, highways with NBFC, aviation with NBFC, etc. And lastly, financial and operating resilience of an NBFC. Basically, how much reserves capital it has, how much payments can be delayed, how much can it survive, etc. Then credit spread. It talks about the difference between repo rate and weighted average lending rate as a major drawback for slowdown of loans in India. So this is, as we discussed under RBI, it is called monetary policy transmission mechanism, where the RBI reduces the repo rate, but the banks are reluctant to pass on the repo rate to others. So therefore, Government of India and RBI need to take more steps or come up with more measures to reduce the credit spread in banking and NBFCs, especially for corporate bonds. Now coming to the next pillar, which is disinvestment. Under disinvestment, it talks about improved firm performance as a result of disinvestment, unlocking potential value of the companies such as BPCL, multiplier effect on other sectors because there is, if we disinvest, for example, if we disinvest Concord. Now in Concord, the reason given for disinvestment was lack of operational investment which the government could do. So if the potential bidder for Concord invest in Concord, it will help as a multiplier effect in other sectors as well, because logistics is a keystone in development of many other industries. Then it talks about aggressive disinvestment, or in other words, strategic sales. Strategic sales is where the government transfers management control to the private investor in order to achieve higher profitability, promote efficiency, increase competitiveness, and promote professionalism in management. Then further under disinvestment, it talks about exit non-strategic business. Here strategic concerns means of security purpose. Security which is threatening our security. Now security can be in two forms. One is a traditional version, where in traditional version we talk about only the military security. But now strategic here means food security, energy security, etc. So money for public infrastructure like roads, power, etc. can come from exiting non-strategic businesses. Transfer stake in listed CPSEs to a separate corporate entity. See why? See, as under public sector banks, we had suggested a holding entity which will hold stake of all public sector banks. So if all the PSE stakes is held in one body, it can be managed by an independent board, mandated to divest government stake over time, professionalism and autonomy to disposition program. Because it should not result in a biggest Giras sale in history as we have seen after 91 in Russia. We should be selling at the appropriate time to maximize the value of the government stake or to maximize the value of return of taxpayer money. So for this, we have to make a corporate identity which will take the decision according to what is the appropriate time for disinvestment rather than making a budgetary procedure or a fixed targeted based date based program, because that will not maximize the value of the disinvestment program for India. Now coming to fiscal policy, under fiscal policy, first is that it talks about concerns of various state governments and their debt. So that debt has increased in the recent past because of Uday bonds for restructuring of discoms, farm loan waivers, and the seventh pay commission. Then it talks about to boost demand, how should the fiscal policy work in a counter-cyclical manner? Now, counter-cyclical here concerns business cycle. So, in business cycle, we have boom, recession, depression, recovery, etc. So, in a boom period, maybe the tax revenue will be higher because the demand is also high. But in a recession, demand will be low, and we need fiscal stimulus measures. So, therefore, even the NK Singh committee under fiscal policy reform or FRBM reform had suggested a counter-cyclical fiscal policy with a window of 2.5% to 3.5% or 3% plus minus 0.5% depending on the counter-cyclical measures which are in need. For example, this year the fiscal deficit has been revised from 3.3 to 3.8 and for next year from 3% to 3.5% to boost the demand from slowdown in India. But due to coronavirus, maybe more steps will be required. Now, all these will be dependent upon revenue buoyancy of GST, rationalizing subsidies, relaxation of fiscal deficit targets, and lastly, structural reforms. Structural reforms here mean that GST is a structural reform, but to make it happen, we need proper implementation. And lowering of corporate tax is a structural reform because it will change the dynamics of foreign investment and also the dynamics of the way we attract and do business in India. Then improved targeting of subsidies through direct benefit transfer. Then overall debt, if we talk about, it talks about that the government debt is roughly rupees 84.7 lakh crore, and out of this 90% debt is public debt or government debt. But the good point is that this debt has low currency risk, that means the foreign exchange risk is very low, and low interest rate risk because these are generally fixed for a long term. So India is not in a crisis situation per se in terms of foreign debt or government debt. Now coming to what are the steps needed? We need to gradually elongate the maturity profile of debt. Elongation of maturity profile here means that mostly right now India's debt is short term. Short term we mean 3 year, 4 year, 5 year, 7 year. So we need to elongate it to 10 year, 20 year, 30 years, and also we have to see that the total liabilities of the central government have been declining since FRBM 2003, and we have to reach a target of 60% by 2024, under which 40% is of state government and 20% of state governments. States have obtained greater fund transfer as well as greater autonomy to utilize funds as per their needs. So this will also help them in achieving that 20% goal. Lastly, the economic survey makes various suggestions to address the current slowdown in India. So under that, the first theme it talks about that we have to that why did the slowdown occur? Because there was reduced credit flow to MSMEs, NBFCs had a liquidity crunch, there was volatility in crude prices, and also there was uncertainties of trade because of growing protectionism in USA and USA-China trade war. So what do we need to do for fostering more investment and addressing the slowdown? So it talks about relaxing more FDI norms, cutting corporate taxes, containing inflation, accelerating infrastructure creation, improve ease of doing business, and reform taxation. See the first point, relaxing FDI norms, we are moving ahead in this part. We've already cut corporate taxes to 22%. Inflation is at an all-time low. We have come up with a national infrastructure pipeline to accelerate infrastructure creation in India. Ease of doing business, we are trying to improve our ranking every year. And also, we have introduced a taxpayer charter to reform the taxation in India, and also faceless appeals, pre-filled tax returns, etc. Now coming to the themes in the economic survey. So themes are very important because they can be asked in mains and prelims both. So under this, the first theme was how to enable greater markets, or how to enable free markets in India. Second was promoting pro-business policies instead of crony capitalism, because it talks about that crony capitalism will hurt all the people, not just the crony capitalists. Because of crony capitalism, there will be more checks and there will be more interest, more liabilities on the common borrower. So we have to promote pro-business policies. You have to strengthen trust in the economy. And also it talks about the main theme, which is importance of ethical wealth creation. So ethical wealth creation encourages entrepreneurship at the grassroots, pro-business versus pro-crony, eliminate policies that undermine markets through government intervention. See, as we'll talk about Essential Commodities Act, assemble in India with Make in India, subscale banking, privatization to foster economy. So coming to the first one, individual hand and trust in the system. So under this, if we have individual hand, which is allowing free market and with trust, so that will give equal opportunities for new entrants, enable fair competition, and also ease of doing business. It will remove undesirable government policies, enable trade for job creation, efficiently scale up the banking sector, and also it makes a statement, a bold statement, which is trust as a public good. See, public goods are generally categorized by diminishing value, but here trust grows as we do more of it. And lastly, it talks about use of data and technology to enhance this trust level. So what under pro-business? And first of all, creative destruction has increased significantly post 1991. Now, creative destruction was a term given by Joseph Schumpeter, where he talks about the new technology always replaces the old one. For example, telegraph is no longer there, we have email. So similarly, it talks about new business has significantly grown, or innovation has significantly grown after 1991 because of pro-business policies in India. Market-based allocation of resources has also encouraged. Market-based here means that people invest money where it is more appropriate or more trendy. So that's why it is encouraging productive economic activity and generating more wealth. Lastly, it talks about what are the problems if we don't go for pro-crony instead of pro-business. So pro-crony has a high chance of willful default, which increases the cost of borrowing for everybody else. See, for example, when Nirav Modi scam happened or Kingfisher scam happened, banks lost money. So therefore, they will be reluctant to pass on the monetary policy transmission to other borrowers, leaving high interest for others as well. So cost of borrowing is increased for everybody else. It slows economic growth, slows employment, and also slows wealth creation. Entrepreneurship, 10% increase in new firm creation increases district level GDP growth by 1.8%. So economic survey talks about what are the benefits of pro-business. It will encourage more and more people to start their own businesses. And we have seen that at the district level, according to the economic survey, a 10% increase in new firms increases the GDP growth of that district by 1.8%. Access to nutrition and satiety also has a direct correlation with creation of these firms and thereby increases GDP. And a good trend is that the new firms in service sector is more than manufacturing, infrastructure or agriculture in India. Lastly, it talks about literacy and education level is very important to develop this new firm creation further. For example, the literacy and education levels in the district foster entrepreneurship significantly, most pronounced when literacy is above 70%. So government has to invest more in degree level colleges, boosting education and literacy at the district level also. Lastly, quality of physical infrastructure. For example, the recent World Bank study says that because of Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, that the rural income increased by 50% just because of improved access. So similarly, physical infrastructure such as road, electricity, water has to will also create enabling environment for new firm creation and also at the same time increase district level GDP growth in India. Lastly, India's ecosystem, which is the third largest ecosystem in the world, has lower levels of formal enterprises on a per capita basis when compared to other countries. So we have to take steps towards greater formalization, such as ASIC, EPFO, GST, composite scheme, etc. Measures to increase literacy levels rapidly through the institution of more schools and colleges will spur entrepreneurship and wealth creation. Better connectivity, as we discussed, to enable access to markets. And lastly, ease of doing business and ease of labor laws will also give a fillip to entrepreneurship development at the grassroots level. Now it talks about government interventions and what are the effects. So for this, first of all, it talks about Essential Commodities Act and the way it is interrupting with the normal functioning of the markets and depressing incomes. So it talks about frequent and unpredictable implementation of ECA. It talks about repressed storage, basically reduce investment in storage, value creation, and national markets for agriculture commodities because of Essential Commodities Act. Then it says stock limits have limited impact on price volatility. And lastly, more freedom to market will facilitate wealth creation. Then it also talks about the Food Corporation of India and how it is disturbing the market. For example, the Food Corporation of India is the biggest buyer. So it is having a lot of buffer stock beyond its norm. Buffer stock and holding limit is very much disenchanted. So therefore, rent seeking and harassment or the biggest holder is the government itself. So we need to rationalize the role of FCI in food procurement. It also brings down the food subsidy and also rationalize the prices. This will be important for long run growth. Although buffer stocks can be rationalized, they cannot be done away with. There is divergence between demand and supply, and also because of FCI, emphasis on open-ended wheat and rice, there is lack of diversification by the farmers in India. Switching to cash transfers and food coupons has been suggested by the Economic Survey. Then lastly, it talks about National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority and Drug Price Control Order, which is making, instead of or contrary to opinion, it is making medicines more expensive compared to before. It is not leveraged to engage in the power of bulk buying, because as we know, government can buy a lot of can buy medicines in bulk, which will be much cheaper to procure rather than buying or putting stock limits or putting price controls. And lastly, it kills the free market in these products. Now coming to loan waivers, because that is also somewhere disturbing the tendency of credit in India. So full waiver beneficiaries consume less, save less, invest less, and are less productive. So basically loan waivers over a long period are not of a much help, although they are a necessary problem in the short run. So Economic Survey suggests that we have to find suitable measures to avoid loan waivers and shift to other mechanisms such as disaster relief, etc. And secondly, decrease in share of formal credit, because the loan waivers are technically not helping with because banks will be reluctant to give them loans again. So therefore it is ending up hurting the whole financial system, and in the long run the banks will be reluctant to give agriculture credit, depress the very market they are intended to serve, decrease competition. And lastly, the Economic Survey talks about Thalinomics, that how the decreasing inflation, especially in food products, has brought down the average price of a meal, say lunch or dinner, in various cities in India. Now coming to the strategy talk. So as we discussed, that the strategy talk is about what are the common strategies which one needs to prepare for the exam, or how to go about studying for the exam. So coming to the question, how important is data or facts or trends for prelims? Now in economics we see a lot of data everywhere. Now in mains it is very helpful if you write some figures in the answer, and probably you will get 1 mark or 1.5 mark extra if you are well versed with data. But the problem comes in prelims, that in prelims we have so much data. For example, poverty, inequality, nutrition, food processing, levels of food processing, etc. But if you see the question in the last 5 years, if you know the trend of data, it is more than enough. For example, the question would be that India's inflation has been coming down consistently, or India's growth rate is growing rapidly. So here consistently will not suffice because onions prices increased in December. So consistently will not be correct. So if one is aware about the trends, trend is about the graphs. So under this, if you know what are the trend, is it haphazard, is it volatile, is it increasing, is it decreasing, is it increasing consistently, is it decreasing consistently. So if one is aware about the trend. Secondly, if we talk about government debt, so they'll ask questions like majority of the debt is denominated in dollars, or only a few part, only small part, or largely it is confined to this. So if you know the trend that who is a main figure, if it is more than, if it is a significant portion of that value, for example, breastfeeding is related to majority factor in nutrition. So is it majority or not? So one should be aware about the facts or trends, that is it the major contributor? If it is major, then is it above 90% or is it close to 70%? Or in data, what are the trends like? So if you know this, it will be more than enough for prelims. But at the same time for mains, will require proper data and about proper quotation, because misinformation is also leading to loss of marks. Thank you. Also, friends, I would request you to attempt two questions in the given in the comment section, and please give us your answers. It will help us in determining how are we able to help you better, and also about it will help you in gauging yourself about your preparation levels. Thank you.